Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We welcome you to our Student in the Workplace virtual connection this morning. We are here with Amy Tevis. She is the Workforce Development Manager at Thayer Power and Communication, which is a line construction company. I'm going to turn it right over to her so she can get started with us. And just a few logistic things before I do that. If you look on your screen, you will see a little bubble with a question mark in it. That is how we can submit questions throughout today's section. If you click on that button with the question mark, you'll be able to type your question in and I'll see it on my end. I will manage all questions throughout the next half hour, and I know she'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So please make your way over to that little button. We might not answer it within the first 15 minutes, but we will devote the last half of our session to questions and answers from you guys out there. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Amy. And she's going to introduce herself and tell you all about the company that she works for. Go ahead, Amy.
Great, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Today, I wanted to tell you not only about my position here, but about the other positions at our company and how they're interrelated. Thayer Power and Communication has actually been in business since 1964. We're a utility contractor. We work for places like First Energy, AEP in Ohio, Verizon, AT&T, Windstream. Our crews are power crews and telecommunication line workers. And as a workforce development manager here, it's my responsibility to organize and schedule training for our 400 plus employees. Some of our training is done in-house, some of it is done through the union, the IBEW, and in some cases we require outside vendors to come in and do training for us in an industry, because our industry is very specific. So like pole top rescue, rigging, things like that. Our corporate office is in Columbus, Ohio, but we have satellite offices here in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Indiana, Virginia, Florida. We prepare training and develop lesson plans and do in-person, online, and we coordinate our safety professionals to do the in-person training. We have a safety team who actually conducts the training. So I just prepare it logistically, and they actually go out and do what they have to do. I'm not a lineman, so I've never been a lineman. So we also developed a registered apprenticeship program here, and that was done in my department as well. And I can tell you a little bit more about that as we get further into our presentation today. I can give you more information on the Teledata Journeyman Lineman program also. So that's pretty much the introduction to where we're at and how we kind of work together. So.
Awesome, thank you. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, on the day-to-day, what takes up the majority of your time? What does a typical day look like? Or is every day different? And maybe you're doing something different every day.
Well, I have worked here for 15 years in various roles, from payroll and accounting to human resources and benefits, and now ultimately in training education. And I can tell you that every day has been different that I've been here. Prior to working here, I worked in college admissions, and I focused on two-year programs then at Erie Business Center. But a typical day here is tying really all of those skills together. So my college admissions skills tied with my, the human resource experience and so forth. So I'm on the phone, I'm organizing the classes, I'm setting up conference rooms, and then we might get a call out for storm and I have to change everything. So because everybody's going down south to follow a storm, and then I've got to move everything around. So it's always an adventure.
So it sounds like maybe flexibility is one of the skills that you might need, but can you talk a little bit more about in your job some of those soft skills that someone might need to be in charge of training and to be in charge of the things that you handle?
definitely need the adaptability and the the organization. There is a bigger picture, and seeing that big picture at the end of the year, having X amount of training done in each department is always the goal. So seeing everything not just on a micro basis, but in the big, in a bigger form of how it all relates together and getting to those final goals. So I guess, setting goals, working towards those goals, focusing on them, really establishing good time management skills, because there is a structure to everything. You can't do this without having done this first. And sometimes, and what I have found happens a lot of times, is I call it unraveling a sweater, where I pull on something and it triggers something else, and then you got to go back and kind of do it all over again. So I guess it's really the adaptability, like anybody else, and especially in this time.
Yeah, I think you're so right. Adaptability, especially now. We've all had to take on that skill set for sure. Absolutely. Now, you've spoken a little bit about how you coordinate the trainings for those that work for your company. Can you talk a little bit about the trainings, what they look like, who needs them, are they required, and what the necessity is there for your company and those who work for it?
Sure. Well, a lot of training here in our structure, the training often leads to advancement opportunities. So that's one of the things I like the most about my job, is that I'm actually working with somebody to improve their lot in life. So they are able to make more money ultimately. They, if they get for example, if they're taking training to get a CDL Class A and they get that CDL Class A, they bump up a step here. We're a union company. So the training is not mandatory. The training is best for their livelihood, I should say. So, and to be honest, my role really didn't even exist up until a couple years ago. We kind of created it internally here as a result of what some of our customers were requesting of us. We work with some very large companies like a First Energy and an AEP and Verizon, and they have their own safety training specifics that they want their contractors to adhere to. So the training that we do here is really the result of customer need and OSHA requirements changing, and that sort of thing, because we are safety first. So everything's safety related.
Yeah. So just to follow up on some of those, can you explain for everyone what OSHA is, in case there are those out there who don't know? And can you also touch on what it means to work for a union company? Because I think we might have some students out there who have heard that term, but maybe don't know what that means.
Great. Okay. Yeah, sure. No problem. Well, I'll tackle the IBEW first. That's the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. They are our union company. And whether you're a power lineman working here, or a power apprentice, or a telecommunication lineman or telecommunication apprentice, you are a member of the IBEW. And the IBEW is nationwide, but every state has a different, what they call local. So here in Pennsylvania, our IBEW is local 1319. In Ohio, it's local 71. That doesn't really change anything. You're still working under the union standards, but you are paid different scales for different places that you work. If you end up working in New York City, for example, the pay scale is a lot higher because of that. But most importantly, the union is really developed to take care of the guys in the field. They provide their safety equipment, their safety standards, and it is our responsibility as management and contractors to put out those safety standards and procedures and give them all the tools necessary to keep them safe. For example, OSHA is the federal government agency that monitors the standards of safety in every workplace. And they actually came to the construction end of things, to our industry, and said, you know, we want you to use, for example, when you're climbing poles, we want you to use this type of equipment because it's safety and it's fall protective. So we had to institute that, you know, company-wide, and then train people on how to use it. So that is kind of how the IBEW and the OSHA work together, and where our procedures are in relationship to that. So.
Yeah, and thank you for touching on that. I know there are terms that I think a lot of students have heard, but in terms of like a full understanding of it, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
And now you've touched a little bit on, you know, what the guys in the field go out and do. Can you explain, you know, what some of those typical jobs look like, what they might get called out to do, and maybe what are some of the not typical jobs they get called out to do that might be surprising for students to hear about?
Okay, awesome. Yeah, great. Well, like I mentioned before, we actually we developed a registered apprenticeship program for telecommunications, and the reason we did that is because at the union level, at the IBEW, they do all of the training for power individuals. So they train those power linemen who are on the top line of the telephone pole, if you see that. But there is no such structured training for telecommunications. It's kind of up to individual contractors to establish that. So we did that here, and we encourage people to take a look at apprenticeships. And really what an apprentice and a lineman do out there is, on the power end of things, they repair and construct utility lines and cables. So there'll be times where the power guys will do call outs or go on storm work, but most of our work is done in cooperation with power companies. So with Penelec or First Energy, and in Ohio with AEP and Duke Energy down south. And they, you know, they're basically doing, you know, they're repairing power lines and transformers in some cases as well. But we don't do a lot of that type of work here. A lot of that is done by the power company itself. But the pole-to-pole stuff is pretty much what we do on the power side and the telecommunication side. Now, the difference in the telecommunication is they are working around power, but they are not working in power. So they don't really deal with those top lines unless they go to a job site and all the power and telecommunication lines are down. Telecommunication folks work primarily with the fiber optics and, you know, data, voice, you know, even we do small cell towers and things like that too. And really getting out, a lot of times what's happening with the COVID situation is there's money available now for getting internet capabilities to the rural communities. So that is where a lot of our guys are focused right now, is getting internet capabilities out into the rural communities, both aerial and underground, just depending on the location. So their typical days are a Monday through Thursday. Because we are a union shop, we work usually 4/10s, and they have a long weekend. And there are situations where they are called out on occasion. So.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I think that's really cool, the information about the money being there for internet in the rural communities. Yes. And I know working in education, we've seen that for sure, that need. So that's awesome. I think now would be a good time if you want to talk a little bit more about the apprenticeship program that you had said for students who might be interested in going in that field. What is that process like? And also, you know, what are the benefits of going that route, the apprenticeship route?
Absolutely. Well, I will, I'll preface by saying I think positions like mine will become more prevalent as companies begin to rebuild their workforce, because I think a lot of companies, especially in the trades, are going to be looking at apprenticeships overall because they really are a win-win for employers and for students, potential employees alike. Our program started in November of 2019. Like I said, it is for telecommunication. It's a 3-year program. It takes about 3 years, 3.5 years. It's offered in the fall of each year, and it is competitive. It's not the Penelec Edinburgh program. So it's because that's power, but it is like that, but for telecommunications. We only accept 6 individuals at a time because we have 6 polls and we have 1 trainer, and it's the personalized attention that is so required in this. We offer first a 2-week boot camp, and they learn their basic climbing skills. They learn about the tools that they'll be using on a day-to-day basis, the equipment. They use the bucket truck, maneuvering the bucket truck and the digger truck a little bit. Learn about lashing wires and cables, and some underground stuff as well. They do a lot. It's a very intense 2-week period, honestly. And should they make it through that, they will then be assigned to a crew, and they will begin working at the first step apprenticeship level, which in Pennsylvania is $15.52 an hour. So the boot camp is the only unpaid portion of the program. Then they start on their apprenticeship track, where they take some related instruction, which is the training I mentioned earlier that I provide company-wide, and they do the on-the-job training with their foremen and journeymen, and they're monitored every 1,000 hours. We have our apprenticeship safety guy go out and do an evaluation, see where they're at, and make a recommendation for them to move up a step. There are 5 steps before they can become a journeyman, and it takes about 1,000 hours to get through all that. So it's easy to apply. There's a $100 application fee. You can apply for the fall. We'd be accepting applications for the fall of 2021 at this point. So if you have anybody out there that's a senior and thinking about something like this, and then we just kind of narrow it down from there. We collect transcripts. Ultimately, we will have you come in for an interview, actually a couple interviews, because the students will interview once with me just to get a feel for their interest. And then if they make it to the next interview process, they're actually interviewing with managers and linemen, to get a feel for their understanding of this job. The recommendation I would make is that because it is competitive, when we do get a lot of applications every year, is that if students are on their track to get a CDL Class A, if they at least have a good driving record and can get a permit, a CDL Class A permit, that's going to give them a little bit of an advantage come the time that interviews are scheduled. So.
And can you elaborate on a CDL Class A, what that is? Sure.
A CDL Class A is the license that semi drivers have. That drive semi trucks, but our guys need them because our line trucks meet that classification. A CDL Class A driver is driving something that weighs, I think it's over 26,000 pounds, and carries a trailer that is 10,000. I don't know the wherewithal. I just know that our guys have to have them because we are driving a line truck that's carrying a trailer with poles. So it fits. So our vehicles fit the classification that a semi would. So we recommend that all drivers have a CDL Class A. It is the process to get one is much like getting a driver's license. You first have to get a permit. You sit down and take a knowledge exam on the computer at the DMV, and then you would take some driving classes somewhere, to learn behind the wheel. There's a pre-trip inspection portion. There's a range portion where you're parking the vehicle, and then there's a the road portion. So it's a 4-part exam if you consider the knowledge test. But yeah, and that's what we like to have.
Yeah, awesome. And thank you for elaborating. I think for any students out there who might be interested, that's a good tip in knowing what to have to get that leg up. Just a reminder to our students out there, our Q&A is open, and we do have some questions in there that I would like to ask you. The first one, are there architects or engineers that design safer towers and lines? And maybe they work for you, or if you know anything about that. And if you don't, that's okay too.
We do have engineers that work on site, but I don't think they don't actually develop the power. They develop the job site itself. So our engineers work a lot of times with the customer's engineers to develop the job site as a whole. So going from point A to point B. Not so much the poles themselves, they're pretty standard, but the actual site and full scope of the job, I guess. Yeah,
thank you. Can you talk a little bit about what a student, let's say a senior, needs to maybe have an interest in, and maybe what classes in high school help a student who's interested in going into this field?
Into line work?
Yes. Let's start there. Yeah.
Okay. They need to be somebody who does not mind working outside, enjoys working with their hands, is more of a hands-on learner as opposed to maybe even a textbook learner. They need to be somebody who's willing to travel, because this job involves, although we have a local office in PA, we don't have anybody that's working in Pennsylvania right now. They leave here and they go out and they're gone for 3-4 days, at a time. So having that, the dexterity, the hands-on, dexterity and ability to do that kind of work, and the interest in that kind of work. And, even some like tech math would be helpful to, and blueprint reading, that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, thank you. Question about the apprenticeship program.
Mm-hmm.
What qualifications does a candidate need to have to interview for the apprenticeship program?
You need to be a high school senior at least, or have graduated from high school. We'll request your high school transcripts. Really, you don't need anything other than that to be interviewed for the initial interview with me, just to get a feel for what your interest is. And then if you like what you hear and you want to apply to the apprenticeship, there's an application fee of $100. There's an apprenticeship application that you complete, and some other things like there's a medical form. When you get closer, there's a medical form for liability. There's publicity. Really, it's a very easy process. The state has made it pretty much very simple to become an apprentice, because it's so extremely important. The most difficult part of the process is probably when we have to turn anybody away, just because ultimately an apprentice goes through boot camp and needs to have a job here. That's the purpose of the program, and we just never know, from month to month. That's why we can only offer it the one time, because we just never know where we can put new people and where they fit in. And so what might start off as 6, we might only end up having 3 slots for. So we have a very, we narrowed down a process there, so unfortunately.
Yeah, I could see that being a harder part of it. Absolutely. Well, switching gears, can you talk a little bit, and you had shared that, you haven't worked in this field your entire life, but about your career journey and maybe what influenced you, what helped you land where you are now, and how you got there.
Okay. Well, like I said, my role didn't really exist up until about a year ago, but I have a little bit about my background is that I actually have an associate's degree from Erie Business Center. Ended up ultimately working there for a number of years, for about 15 years, honestly, in post-secondary education. And then started kind of looking for got kind of burned out in the admissions end of things and started looking for just some part-time work. And I ended up coming here, applying to for a part-time data entry position. And by the time I got here, their payroll clerk had put in her 2 weeks and I started full-time. So, and I was very interested in payroll and tax accounting and things like that. It was bringing back my business skills from having been at Erie Business Center. So I did ultimately go on and get my 4-year degree in accounting. So, and I think that helps me a lot on the, I guess on the very detail-oriented type of stuff, because that's the kind of person I am. But I think the most important thing is the skills I use on a daily basis really are the Microsoft Office skills, the Teams like we're doing today, you know, really just having good communication skills. I am, up until about 2 or 3 years ago, I was, well, I still am the only female manager here. We have 400 men that work here, and communicating, not to give them any, but there's a different communication style with them. They're doing their thing that they're doing. You know, they're linemen. They're out there doing that. So, and that's where they see their big picture, and then my big picture's here. So finding a communication that works for all of us in that way, that has probably been and will always be a struggle, is that communication. But having good organizational skills and really being, I've always been very willing to learn more about this industry because, like I said, I am not a lineman. So I try to learn something every day about the industry itself, or the unions that I'm working with, or our customers, or our competitors, or something about. And I've gone through many trainings and workshops, and just really being open to seeing various sides of this industry and being adaptable in that way.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice for our students, no matter what you're looking to go into, to always be willing to learn more about the industry, more about what you do. Can you talk a little bit, and let me just make sure before I ask this question, your position, you're the first person in it, correct? Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to work in a job that you're basically creating or created?
Yes. Well, it's interesting because I don't have anything to compare myself to, and that's not necessarily a good thing, you know, because it's nice to establish a benchmark and then be able to rise above that benchmark. So I guess it's been a little challenging finding that benchmark, and I've also, at the same time, I'm putting together kind of a procedures manual as I go through my day-to-day things, just in case, you know, I would ever leave and somebody else fill my position. I want them to be able to be trained to do what I do, because other than, in addition to scheduling courses and so forth, I also work with like the Career Link and Ohio Means Jobs and you know, WedNet PA and some state agencies to get reimbursement for training, for some, you know, training funds for our employees as well, basically for the company, for the money that we're putting into training. So there's that kind of piece that falls into it as well. So it's not just, you know, sending people out on a schedule. It's kind of that, you know, helping this program stay solvent as well. So so it's been challenging, but I like a challenge. So
Yeah, thank you. Well, we are just about at time, so I'm going to leave you with our one final question. If you could give any piece of advice to our seniors out there who are trying to navigate what comes next and make decisions on careers or post-secondary education, what would that piece of advice be?
I would just say be open to all your options, because you really never know where life is going to take you. And you never know who you're going to meet that's going to end up being part of your career life or your life in general. And I'll leave you with a quick example. My daughter graduated from college during this time, virtually, of course. She is a musical theater major, was at Otterbein in Columbus, and of course Broadway is shut down till May of next year. So she, over the COVID time, she started honing her other skills and doing cookie decorating, for example. And she ended up getting back to New York in a part-time cookie decorating job, whatever. You just don't know where life's going to take you, especially now. So my advice would just be open to the people that you meet, reach out to people that you know or your parents know, and investigate all of your opportunities: apprenticeships, 2-year opportunities, 4-year schools, not going to school at all, whatever. You just investigate your options.
Awesome and great advice. I fully agree. So Amy, thank you so much for joining us and providing us with all of the information that you did. We really appreciate you spending part of your morning to do this. I would like to just let everyone know out there that you can continue to check our website for the links for the upcoming connections, and we would be happy to have you on any of them moving forward. So Amy, thank you again, and thank you to everyone for joining.
Take care now.
Yep.